Alrighty, hi everyone. Just want to thank you all for tuning into my new update. I have a couple of different things that I've actually ended up changing and creating in my video or in my project. And let's kind of go right into it, and I can kind of show you visually the things that are different. So I click here, and I'll start playing my game. As you can kind of tell, I actually do have an enemy, which has an AI scripted to it, which basically is just indicated to follow my character around. Additionally, I also have changed some of the effects for my gun, and the little laser thing that kind of comes out of it. I've also added a particle for when it actually makes contact with something, uh, which is actually something I just think makes it look really good. Another thing that I've added is I've actually added um, stats or characteristics to the actual enemy. And so if I continue to shoot it, it eventually dies. And that's just based off of a variable that I've called for when something actually gets hit, and for the amount of times that it basically dies. So, or the amount of times that it actually takes for it to die. So let's go into my pistol, and we'll talk about some different things. I've actually added another variable called impact particles. And if I go into the weapon script, which is right here, you can actually see that here, the hit prefab. And for that prefab, I have impact particles, which is actually just a nice little thing that I've been able to edit in Unity and haven't had to do much coding in it. And so basically I was just able to add the particle and then change it based on what I wanted, and then coded in here basically when I wanted it to appear, which is actually set right here. So let's see here. As far as the AI goes, let's go into here. And so this is my enemy AI, of which I grabbed a sprite for to kind of represent. And then down here, I actually downloaded a script called A-star pathing. And basically what A-star pathing does is it actually establishes a grid for your AI to kind of follow in reference to where it can go and where it cannot. So a couple different things. It won't actually collide, or will collide and not travel through any of the platforms or the character. Additionally, if I go into here, a couple of different things that I've added on here. I've added the rigid body 2D physics engine for it. And then I've also added a circle collider, which basically just makes it run into other things with colliders on there. And that's kind of a part of the rigid body on there, the rigid body script. If I go into the enemy script here, I can pull up the behavior of my enemy or my space station. Basically, I've set the health to 100 by declaring this variable. And then down here, I have a method which calls the enemy stats. And then basically, if I damage the enemy, which is an integer of damage, stats.health is minus or equal to the damage. If stats.health is less than 0, game master calls a function in the game master to kill the enemy, which is actually just a destroy object that works just like the player one that I showed you in my last video. So that's how that works. And then if I go into the AI, I can kind of show you how I did some of the pathing. Basically, what I've got it set up for is I've got a target, which I have just set to the player transform, which is this. It's referencing this object here. And then I have my AI script, which if I go into, I have a couple different components that I have here. So requirement component, these are just some requirements of the variables for it. So it has to have rigid body 2D and it has to have a seeker. Then also what to chase is going to declare this variable as target. This is actually called in the later functions that actually determines the path. How many times per second will it update our path? So the update rate is 2 seconds. So that's not updating by per frame. The calculated path is going to be a variable called path. The AI speed per second is going to be this number here, which I think is, I'm actually not sure what the value is, but if you increase it, it goes faster. And this just seemed to be a decent speed for it to go at the moment. And so Force 2D mode is just a reference to something that's in the Unity library that actually helps. And then down here, basically the max distance from the AI point for it to continue its next waypoint. So basically, if you're moving away from the AI, or basically like it's basically the distance from the target and the path. So if the target moves, this is the max amount of distance that the target can be before it actually changes the path in order to continue pursuing you. And then this is the waypoint that we're currently pursuing. So basically, I have a private boolean searching for player, which is currently set to false. I have seeker.get component, which is seeker, get component rigid body, which are variables I declared up there. If target is equivalent to null, this is actually just a function that basically makes you search for the player if it's not able to find it. And then it's referencing the coroutine search for player, which is actually down here. So if this is the coroutine, basically game object s result equals game object find game object with tag arm. I did have it set to player, but for whatever reason, sometimes that would make that the AI must function and basically just go to where the spawn point is. I'm assuming that there's something else with the tag player in my code. And that's basically what's making it not function in that way. But by setting it to ARM, it fixes that problem, and I don't have anything else to set to ARM. So that was easier than actually trying to find where that was. And so, and this down here, if s result is equal to null, basically this just states that you should wait a few seconds before starting the coroutine player again. Then else, target s result is s-result.transform, searching for player then becomes false, start coroutine, update path. And then this function here basically just searches and updates the path based on your movement. And then I also have a wait for a second, so that's not doing it for every frame because that's really operating system intensive. And then down here, I actually have this function here, which makes the AI actually move in the direction that's supposed to be going to. And it's actually referencing a couple different things. So transform position, this makes it just follow the path in the current waypoint. And then if distance, that's referencing the variable up there to make it update the path. And then if you're in the current waypoint, if you're in the current waypoint, then you return. So that's kind of how the AI works. If you guys have any other questions or pro tips for things that I might want to implement to kind of add depth to the game, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video.